Hi, Luke Edwards from Korg here with Promenade, and I'm going to show you the King Korg now. Now, this is a great synth. It's our flagship synth actually for just sound manipulation, loads of real-time controls. There's a couple of things which are special about it. First of all, we've modelled lots of classic filters, which I'll show you in a minute. So you've got stuff like MS-20s in there, Moog or Moog, Prophet 5, Roland TB303, and some others. You've also got this full analog tube in here, which really warms up the sound and makes it feel a little bit more analog, even though it's a virtual analog synth. But you can also really drive that and boost it to break up the sound a little bit and make it feel a bit more gritty and grainy, which is really cool. We've also got dedicated sections for different parts. So for instance, we've got our main screen here, we've got a dedicated screen to see which waveform we're using and which oscillator, and also your filter screen, and then your effects section is over here on the left. So without further ado, let's dive in and listen to some of the sounds. So as you heard there, I was using the arpeggiator and also this pitch bend and mod wheel to add some different effects, completely assignable. We'll get into that a little bit later. So I'm going to let you listen first of all to some of the different filter models. So first of all, we've got King Korg's own filter, which sounds like this. Other stuff we've got in here, we've got that famous kind of Moog filter, which is really smooth. And one characteristic of the King Korg as well is that when you change the cutoff, you don't really hear any stepping or aliasing at all. It's just a silky smooth filter, even when you bring up the resonance. So this is the Moog filter. Other filters we've got in here, Prophet 5, more of a kind of brighter, fizzier kind of filter. And of course the classic Oberheim synth from the 80s. And our very own MS-20, of course, much more aggressive kind of filter, great for searing leads and bass lines. And of course that kind of acid filter, which was made very famous by the Roland TB303. Loads of great real-time controls on here, as I said. So on my right side, I've got all the synth controls, the oscillator, the filter, the amplifier, the LFO, and the envelope. So for instance, if I want to apply an LFO really quickly, I can just take this nice, quite static pad sound, change the LFO, change the intensity, and also the rate. So I get something pulsating like that, or I can bring the rate right down and have a slowly evolving sound. I'm using my favourites to go through my sounds here. So Normally you'd be in program mode and you go through by category here. So if I wanted a bass sound, I'd just go through, find my basses or my leads. But I've also got favourites, so I can use these same buttons as my favourite sounds, which is really neat, especially when you're performing. You've got 5 banks of those as well. So I'm into bank B now. So let's have a listen to a few of these. So over here, I've got my favourites. Over here I've got my effects. So there's 3 blocks, and I can easily turn them on and off just by pressing these knobs, which is really neat. So here we've got a nice delayed sound. So I can turn off the effect, have it dry. I'll turn it on and change obviously the parameters then underneath. If I want to apply an effect to an existing sound which doesn't have an effect on it, or has a different effect, all I have to do is swing this around. So we've got this kind of synth sound here. So if I want some distortion on it, just swing it around to distortion, and this will affect the amount of drive. And again, I can easily A/B my sound without the effect and with it. We've also got the tube as well, so I can use this in different ways really. At the moment it's already turned on, but it's at quite a low level, so it's just warming up the sound nicely. But I'm going to crank it now, and I'm going to boost it as well to give this really distorted kind of sound. So I can go from this to this. Just by using the tube. Back over to my right side, and I've got a nice envelope generator which I can apply to the filter or the amp, or both. So here we've got this sound, which is really nice because the filter opens up slightly delayed, so it's slightly after the actual initial sound comes in, and that's because it has its own envelope. So you can hear that the filter opens, but I can change the attack here, so I could have it opening immediately, or really slowly, or somewhere like I had it. We've got 2 timbres in here, and each timbre has 3 oscillators, so we can have up to 6 oscillators in total should we want it, and they can either be stacked on top of each other or they can be split, so we can have 3 oscillators here and 3 oscillators here. So for this next sound we've got some stacked on top of each other, but what's nice is that I can use this mod wheel to bring in and out the different timbres. So for instance, I can have just a single oscillator saw wave, but if I push this forward, it brings in the second timbre. And if I pull it back, it introduces more reverb and also filters the sound. But it's really nice using this as a controller because it's all very smooth, so the sound almost morphs between the different sounds rather than having different presets. You can also use the timbres in different ways. So for instance here I've got a split keyboard, so I've got a pad sound on my left and then a lead sound on my right. of course we've got an arpeggiator in here as well. You heard that on the very first sound I played. So this is programmable, and you can do many different things. You can use it just as a kind of a regular arpeggiator like this. Or you could have it applied to your split keyboard, so I could have my right side arpeggiated, being a trigger arpeggiator, and the left one not, so I can play that one live, like this. So that's another way to use it, but it's also got a step arpeggiator, which is really cool. So the way that works is I can go Shift Arpeggio. It gets me into the arpeggiator menu where I can change things like the resolution, the gate time, the swing, but also which steps are active. So I can go through and say, okay, I'm going to take out a couple of steps. So then we get that kind of nice syncopated kind of feel. So I can just bring in and out steps whichever I want, and I can then save that, and that's part of the sound, the program as well. So you save everything. You save the oscillators, the filters, the amps, all the parameters, the effects, and also the arpeggiator pattern to go with it, which is really neat. So back to my favourites. I've got loads of great acoustic type sounds in here as well. So of course it's a great analog modelling synth, but we've got some really usable, what we call PCM based, sample based sounds in here as well. Things like pianos. And some really famous sounds that Korg have done over the years, like this M1 organ, for example. And some other classic sounds like mellotrons. So we've got some great strings in here, but we've also got this great mellotron flute as well. So that's the King Korg, amazing analog modelling synth. It's our flagship in the range. Loads of hands-on controls, dedicated screens for different sections, and of course that analog valve to really warm up the sound or really drive it to get where you want to go. Go and check one out.